Huh? What is he doing over there? Crappy Swami, I gotta get out.
Easy, white chocolate. I wouldn't want you to melt.
I tasked myself to finish my second solo project in just 2 months, and honestly, it's kind of a miracle that I actually pulled it off. In my last project, I worked on a Peak clone called Peaker. It was a movement-based game focused on teaching me character movement and animation blueprints. This time around, I wanted to challenge myself, so for this project, I decided to add an enemy AI as the main obstacle, and that decision opened the door to way more problems than I was ready for. When I started this project, the first thing I had to do was get the movement systems working. So instead of using YouTuber ChatGPT to help me like I normally do, I referenced my last project's code to get the movement systems up and running. It went pretty smoothly, but it also made me realize I really need a better way to reuse systems between projects, because rewriting the same code every time is not it. If you have a better workflow for reusing systems, let me know in the comments. I'm always looking for ways to learn and better my systems. Once I got the movement system working, I needed to figure out the theme for the project. Since I knew I'd be finishing this project around Christmas, my original idea was to make a stealth game where you play as a little kid on Christmas night and you hear Santa walking into your house. But this wasn't no normal Santa. No. This Santa was an evil monster that eats naughty kids. Totally a normal and sane idea. Anyway, that idea died instantly when I realized that there were 0 usable free Santa or child assets, and I'm not paying for assets in this economy. Eventually, I found a Paragon monster asset as well as a survival character asset, and the entire concept changed for my game. Instead of the Christmas idea, you would play as a hiker lost in the woods looking for a way to escape, while this monster roams around hunting its next prey. After coming up with the theme, I imported the assets, quickly retargeted the animations to the new character, and set up a basic animation blueprint. About an hour and a half later, the survivor character was smoothly transitioning between the idle and walking states. Up to this point, I felt pretty confident. All I had left was the gameplay loop, the enemy AI, and a win condition. Everything was moving smoothly, but a little too smoothly. So far, everything is going great. I had my theme picked out, I had the character movement and animations working well, and I decided to add some more movement to my character. I wanted to have a sprint and crouch mechanic. In my head, this was simple. Add the input logic, bind it, and add animations. Easy, right? Well, yes, but not for me apparently. I was able to get the sprinting mechanic to work properly, but the crouch mechanic, oh my god, the crouch. That thing just would not cooperate with me at all. I spent close to 2 hours Googling, asking ChatGPT, and watching YouTube videos, and nothing worked. By the end, I ended up deleting the is crouching variable, and I redid it. And the funny thing is, when I redid it, I didn't change anything, and it just worked. I guess that's just how it goes sometimes. So the next day I come back to continue the project, only to see an error that says the project hadn't saved properly, and there were compiler errors. I go to test if my crouch mechanic worked, and it didn't work. So what did I have to do? Start all over! Again, of course. And don't get me wrong, this is normal, and I wasn't too upset about it. What really got me was when I went to reuse the same logic that got it to work initially, but it did it again. I couldn't crouch, and I had to spend another 2 hours trying to fix it, but this time I wasn't able to get it done in time. After this day, I felt like I needed to take a break, so I decided to take a 2 to 3 day break. Alright, so my 2 or 3 day break may or may not have turned into a 3-week break. Hey, I'm sorry. Burnout hit me pretty hard, and I explained that more in my previous video, but after 22 days, I finally felt ready to jump back into the project. I still remember that the crouch mechanic was broken, and I really didn't want to deal with that again, so instead I worked on creating the level. Unlike my last project, where I made the level by hand, this time I used a preset level because my goal is to be a game programmer, not an artist or level designer. So instead of wasting time handcrafting a level, I used a forest asset, added more trees, some invisible barriers, changed the time to night, and called it a day. And honestly, I was happy with the decision. I felt like I needed to focus on the skills I actually want to improve on and cut out the unnecessary fluff. So after making the level, I spent the next couple of hours fixing the crouch mechanic, and eventually I was able to get it to work. After finishing the animations for my character, it was time to make my game actually a game, because as of right now, all I have is a walking simulator. So for this game, I went with making the player need to collect 3 parts to be able to escape. I took inspiration from Call of Duty Zombies, my all-time favorite game mode experience. In Call of Duty Zombies, you would need to gather 3 parts to build a shield. So I wanted to do the exact same and scatter the parts out on the map, and then you would need to find them while evading the killer. I went back to the Unreal Engine store, downloaded 3 static mesh assets of a hook, a rope, and a wrench. Once I had the assets in my project, I started to work on creating the parent class in C++ and made 3 separate blueprints that inherited from the class. Yeah, I know a little thing or two about inheritance. I'm sort of a genius over here. I also added some sign functionality to give the objects a floating up and down motion. Lastly, I needed a way to make the character pick up the item. So I added a box collision that will check if the player is overlapping the buildable. And if they were overlapped, you are then able to interact with it. For me to be able to do this, I had to learn about delegates. They look scary at first, but they're surprisingly simple. After I got the delegates to work, I had the buildable destroy themselves once called on by the pickup event. I also added UI widgets to prompt the player to press E to pick up. Next, I needed to let the player know how many items they had picked up during gameplay. I initially tried to do the logic in C++, but I couldn't get it to work. So instead I made this. Yes, it's not the prettiest thing you've seen, but it works. And that's all that matters, right guys? So it worked, but it worked to a degree. The widgets that would get called would overlap each other, and at the time, I wasn't sure why. I ended up finding out that when you assign a widget to a variable, you need to call a remove from parent function to clear the widget's variable, and then you need to reassign the variable with a new widget. After learning this and some slight tweaks, I got it to work. With all this being done, it was time for the hard part, the enemy AI. Okay, so I kind of chickened out on this one. I went straight to a tutorial because I've only worked with AI once before, and that was months ago in an Unreal Engine Udemy course. So I watched some YouTube tutorials and learned how to make an enemy AI in blueprints. I even made an animation blueprint for the AI, and when I went to test it, nothing happened. Then I remembered about blackboards and behavior trees. So I watched a couple tutorials on blackboards and behavior trees, and I ended up making 2 tasks, a roam task and a chase task. And now, when I crossed the enemy's pawn sensing component, it would switch to chase mode and follow my character. So far so good. Sort of. Only issue with the logic was, once the enemy AI would switch to chase mode, even if I left its pawn sensing radius, it would still be able to detect me. I wasn't able to solve this issue at the time, so instead of trying to fix it, I decided to add a hiding system. I made a bush actor that would be able to hide the player. So when the player entered the box collision of the bush, it would pop up a text saying hidden. At the moment, all it did was pop up text. It didn't have any code logic to actually de-aggro the killer. So I was left with a broken AI system that needed to get fixed eventually. So after working on the enemy AI, I took a couple of days off, but there was a problem. It was December 10th and I had a vacation coming up in 2 weeks, but I had planned to finish this project and upload a YouTube video before the end of the year. So that means that from this point on, I had 2 weeks to finish my game and post a YouTube video, or else I'd miss my deadline. I still needed to polish my enemy AI system, fix the hide ability since it did nothing at the moment, add a win and loss condition, and add a death animation, all in a week, and then make a script, edit the full video, and upload the video. So much for my advice about taking your time from my last video. Lastly, don't rush the process. With all this said, it was time to lock in.
What? I need to get 5 million coins somehow. Ugh, okay, fine.
The issue with the behavior tree was that if I was seen, the killer would never unlock on me. Even if I tried to hide in the bush, the killer would still run at me. I tried many things to fix it. I added new Boolean variable conditions, I deleted the blackboard and did it in blueprints instead, but that didn't work. And then I remade the blackboard, but still it wouldn't de-aggro my character. So my project eventually got to a point where it was a bit messy and a lot of the changes were confusing me. I wanted to revert my save commit to GitHub to a point before I made all the changes. So I went to GitHub to revert the commit and all was fine and dandy, right?
Nope.
What do you think this is? A happy story? Nothing ever goes right for me. I ended up somehow accidentally saving the progress I made, and then when I went to revert it, I couldn't, or at least I didn't know how to. I'm sure there was a way, but at the time, I didn't have time to look it up, so I had to start all over again.
Let it out. Let it out.
Gosh, I won't lie to y'all. I got off my computer after that, and I was ready to make my next YouTube video called How I Failed My Second Project. I was so upset. It's so funny to think back on that, but I continued on and got back to making the behavior tree again. But then, out of nowhere, it started to work, sort of. The logic for swapping back and forward worked, but not because of my efforts. It was purely luck. What I think had happened was, I was making adjustments to the bush asset size, and I made it a little bit larger, and because of that, when my character was in the bush would cover the entire player character, which prevented pawn sensing to detect the player. I was extremely confused on what or why it was working at the time, but I'm gonna take it. Once that was done, I got back to work on finishing the rest of the game. The date was December 14th, and I finally finished my game. I added my win condition, a death animation, some particle effects to the buildables to make it a little bit more visible, and I was done. So I proudly present to you my game. Looks good, right? I'm pretty proud of this one. I think it came out a lot better than I expected it to, especially the final touch-ups. Making it dark and using only one light source, as well as the sound design. It really changed the game from a casual stealth game to more of a horror game. This was a pretty big and challenging game for me to make, especially for my current skill set, and although it wasn't all in C++ like I said I would do, it's fine, I'm happy with it. In the end, if the game looks and feels good, that's all that matters to me. Sucks that I didn't get the Christmas theme for the holidays, but I guess I could do this real quick. And if you could leave a comment for me of any tips on becoming a better game programmer, it would help me out greatly. I really want to get into the game industry as fast as possible, and I'd love to hear what I could be doing to improve my skills faster. Thank you again for staying to the end. Happy holidays to all of you, and I'll see you guys in my next video.